Hello, world. Well, here we are live. Supposed to talk to Ethan Van Sciver. Not hearing back from him. I don't want anybody to think that it's going to happen. I don't know. I'm not hearing back from him. I've got the tweets, the DMs. He wants to chat. I sent out the invite. Hopefully he'll join in a few minutes. I'm going to give him a couple minutes, and I want to take this time just to say a couple things. Apologies to anybody. I'm not, trying to run any games or anything like this. Thanks everybody who's tuning in. Thanks everybody who watched our previous live streams. The Steve Jeppy streams might have been your first introduction to this channel. If so, welcome. Thanks for joining. Thanks for checking us out. If you watched our Steve Jeppy retailer stream, you got to see him talk to one side of the equation in the current distribution crisis. If you stuck around for the publisher one, you talk to the other side. I don't know what people were really expecting out of these things. It wasn't like a summit meeting. It wasn't like these guys were getting together to brainstorm and solve the industry problems. It was really just my attempt to get some of these players together, talking to each other, and just starting the conversation about comics. I really didn't mean, didn't have a lot of I didn't have questions prepared necessarily to ask them. I regret a little bit some of my lack of preparation there. Couple of questions if I had to do it over again, and I will, because I'll say this, all those guys were great, and they've all agreed to come back on the show, either solo or in a group in the future, and I appreciate that. I want to take a second here and address my little statement, my little hissy fit that I threw in the middle of the video that turned a lot of people off. A lot of people, some people liked it, some people didn't. I went back and looked at it, and I'm not proud of myself the way I acted because of this. I'm not ashamed of any of the criticisms that I've levied because, I honestly, as far as comicsgate is concerned and that movement, and honestly, that's what I believe it is. That's what I believe it should be called. It's an artistic and economic movement, essentially. I mean, call it what you will. I think it's worth talking about, worth covering. I don't see serious coverage of it in the rest of the comics press, and I wanted to talk about it. I watched Zach's stream for a long time. Guys, I was out of comics for a long time. I was having kids and rebuilding my career after I sold my comic shop. I wanted nothing to do with comics for a while. So I wasn't into them. I wasn't reading them or anything. And when I dipped back in, that was when all the comicsgate brouhaha was happening. And honestly, I moved to a small town that doesn't have a comic book shop. I was really out of it. So when I first discovered the channel Comics Matter with your boy Zach, I don't know anything about Comicsgate, and I would watch his videos and I'd go, oh, this guy's got an interesting take. He's about my age. He kind of talks about the kind of comics that I like. It's interesting, and it was an inspiration to me, honestly, to go on to reviewing comic books on YouTube, because I saw the guy go. All he did was sit in the car with his camera and look at some comics and talk about them, and I'm like, I can do that. So it was inspiring in that way. And I listened to him, and I listen to him to this day. I don't listen to every video. I don't listen to all of every video, but I listen to what the guy says. More about comics and the actual, I like what he has to say about the mechanics of comics and what he thinks makes a good comic versus a bad comic. I think his stuff is very legitimate in that way. I get a little more upset when what triggered me in that live stream was coming in and coming in with the negative comment that he had. Seemed like kind of nothing. But I mean, in previous videos, I had put up his comments, the constructive ones, and even the ones that were not so constructive, but were not insulting, in my opinion. And I got triggered a little bit. Dude, I was working really hard on that stream. 6 people going, I'm juggling, I'm doing the comments, I'm doing the video. I don't have anybody here running my thing or anything. It's just me. So that gets tricky. Anyway, when I saw that comment, when I see him, he's a publisher, and he talked about this in a video, and we talked it over. I reached out to Zach, and they were cool in the sense that I'm sorry for having reacted that way, not necessarily for what I said. And he's cool with that too. He doesn't want to come on my channel, but he doesn't want to come on anybody's channel. So that's cool. And I don't have the right to force him. I don't have he's got nothing to gain by coming on this little channel. That's for sure. And I got everything to gain by having him come on. I'll admit that. As far as I've got a lot to gain as far as whatever, views, eyeballs. But I also got a lot to lose. People are warning me. People are out there warning me about Ethan, about comicsgate in general. You want to steer clear. It's poison, some say. And they go, man, nothing but trouble is going to come from this. And my thing is, I've looked into it, and I've been talking to some other comics journalists lately, different ones, doesn't matter who, a lot of different ones. And some of them were like very confused. Some of them thought like I wanted to look into comicsgate and covering it, but it's so hard, just the way it all went down in Twitters and this and that and stuff that's been deleted and removed and everything else. It's just very confusing to read up. So I couldn't get the truth, my arms around what this whole story was. So I just started listening. And that's kind of what, like, I don't know, that's sort of like what my dad taught me to do, is like listen, open up your ears a little bit and listen. And that's why I apologize for like yelling and saying, shut up. That's not something that you do. And that's why he wouldn't come out. So I wanted to reach out to Ethan, who I've talked to before. I talked to Ethan before. He invited me onto John Malin's comicsgate stream, whatever. And those guys they challenged my assumptions that I said, but they were very nice and polite, besides the comments in the chat, whatever. And they really were ready to talk and willing to talk. They had their ideas, some of which I think are legitimate gripes and some are not. Many are not. But to tell you the truth, I don't care. I'm so sick of this stuff. I'm so sick of identity politics on all sides. You know, I don't want to be an alt-right. I don't want to be a social justice warrior. I don't know what those things, those don't mean anything to me. I'm just a person with different opinions. And when we get put in a box and everybody assumed that when I said something against Zach, that I'm on that side and he's on this side. And dude, I'm old enough to remember when there was a thing called Team Comics, where like people like had disagreements and there were guys of different political stripes working in the industry, and they were, and that was okay. And that stuff didn't really come up because what it was really about was comics and sales and selling comics, but like making great comics that everybody loves and reads together. So I'm rambling a little bit, hoping that Ethan is going to show up, and I don't blame him. I think this was just a misconnect, a scheduling snafu. I don't think he's standing me up. I think that I probably maybe jumped the gun scheduling this before I got a firm confirmation of that he would be able at this time. He has seen my DMs, but that doesn't mean anything. He's a busy guy. People are busy. We will reschedule this. One thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to also say one thing that I messed up. I'm new to this streaming game. I messed up on not reading all of the super chats at the end. I didn't really realize that was the thing you should do. Of course, people paid and you should show them all. I did show the super chats that I saw come through, but like I said, I might have missed one or two, and I apologize to that. I did take all that money plus some and doubled it and sent a big donation to Bink to help small bookstores and specifically to help comic book stores. So that's important to me. And that's the other thing I want to say here, guys, is like, I'm pro comics, and I'm definitely pro comic shop. And that kind of means like direct market shops, because I grew up in one. I don't know if anybody knows, but like I've said this a million times, but I grew up in a comic book shop. I started working at one when I was 11 years old, and I worked there through high school. I came back and I bought that shop and I ran it for 10 years in the early 2000s. And that was when, comics were making this climb into cultural relevance from the get. They'd already started, but I was trying to fight that fight to get comics into libraries and schools and tell teachers that comics were a literacy tool, not an enemy, an opponent. I did all that stuff. I wrote software for comic book stores and I gave it away. I joined and helped with the trade organization Comics Pro where I could, did what I could to chip in, while at the same time running my small shop. It was a couple man operation in San Jose, and still there. Hijinks Comics in San Jose, oldest comic shop in San Jose. I have no more economic affiliation, nothing but love and memories. I actually would like to do a reunion show with some of the old guys, because that's what like made me realize how important the culture of comic shops were, at least to me. Like, I'm not a guy that goes to bars or something like anything like that. Like, the comic shop is my bar. That's my place where I would go, and there's people I know. My people are there. We talk comics and we look at things and we talk about things, and it's just like I grew up that way and I love it. So it's really meaningful to me. And when I see shops, and especially shops by people I know that are really great people that I love, and they're struggling because of this crisis that's going on. I mean, everybody's struggling, pandemic, whatever. But, you know, comic shops, as we all know, are particularly hit immediately by this. And there's a lot of people that get on these shows and talk about the for instance, Diamond, that they're a monopoly and they should have been ready for this. And how could they not survive 2 weeks? Give me a break, guys. Nobody saw this coming. Diamond's monopoly, if you really listen to those shows that I did and you really listen to the stories that Jeppy and those other people told, that monopoly may be what saved comics and kept the comics industry alive through the tremendous implosion that it went through. Now, I'm not a fan of monopolies per se, or against them. I'm a pragmatist at heart, right? So if a monopoly provided the consolidation of resources that was needed to save shops and save the industry, then it was probably a good thing, in my opinion. But is it great for consumers and shops overall, and for a robust health of the industry? I think probably not. I think that, you know, it's like a monoculture. It's like bananas, where there's only one kind of banana out there, the Cavendish. And, you know, there was once a banana blight that was taking the Cavendish down. And because the Cavendish banana was cultivated as like the shelf safe, like the best banana to sell around the world, that was cultivated everywhere. And all the little types of bananas kind of went to the wayside. There's only one type of banana. So when a monoculture, when a Cavendish blight came in, you know, it just destroyed the banana industry. And there's people working on that are working on different strains of bananas and coming up with solutions to that and what have you. But the metaphor that I'm straining with here is that when something like this hits the direct market, the effect was immediate because there was only the one source of product, Diamond. So do I think that these new distributors are a good thing or a bad thing? I think in the abstract, they are very good. But the devil is in the details. What I don't like about this current situation that I see is that those distributors seem to be regional monopolies, right? On DC product or duopolies, whatever you want to say. But you can't, as far as I know, a single shop in a given state can only order from one or the other to get it. They can order from Diamond and either Lunar or DCBS, depending on the state. I could be wrong. And there's people who were in the comments before who said that I was wrong about that. And I don't think that's true. For everything that I've known, I know a lot of retailers all over the country. Everything I'm hearing, it's regionally exclusive. If you're in a certain state, if you're in Indiana, you're using DCBS. If you're in New York, it's they've divided it up. And I even did some math based on the different accounts and the regional distribution. And you can just see that it's like DCBS is the West from Indiana over. And then if you break it up by volume of dollars per state too, it's almost an exact 50-50 split. And that analysis also comes courtesy of John Jackson Miller, friend of the show and contributor to the show. I guess what I'm saying is that it's never as simple as monopolies are bad and evil and should go away. There are what the laws do is check to see if the monopoly was harmful to consumers. They deemed it was not. And that's got to be good enough for us. But in reality, now there are these exclusive agreements. And if there's one thing I regret not asking those publishers is, did they plan to break their exclusive agreements with Diamond? Were they thinking about it? Did they have a clause or ability to? I think I'm going to follow up with some of them and try to. I want to talk to other publishers as well. But here's the thing. Steve Jeppy doesn't just want to talk to publishers too, guys. He actually expressed the desire to have one of these calls like with fans, with like comic readers. Okay. So if you think you'd like to do something like that, send me a message and tell me why you think you'd be good to do that. Because Steve is not looking for people to blow smoke up his ass and to not challenge him. He is looking for info. As he said, he's an info junkie. Did you notice he gave out his email address on both of those streams? Many people probably didn't, because most people don't watch all the streams. all of the stream. A lot of people, like I saw reaction videos. By the way, the reaction videos get many, many times more views than my actual video gets. And that's just a little bit sad. To me, I mean, it's the way YouTube works and everything else, and those guys have earned their audience. So I don't begrudge them that. But it's just interesting. I would think people would want to go to the source. But then you go to the source, and it's 2 hours of old dudes talking about inside baseball, about comics distribution. Even if you're a comics fan, it's really tough to sit through that. So I get it. I think maybe I should go through and chop up some clips and bring them in there. Anyway, you know what I'm going to do now, guys, is I was not expecting this, but I got 2 super chats, a couple super chats here already. So I'm going to bring those up right now before I get out of here. I don't want to waste anybody's time, but I appreciate people. And I'll read some of the comments too. All right. Send Dan Fraga the link. He's comicsgate in your chat. I don't know Dan Fraga, although he's a friend of a friend, a major retailer who you would know is a friend of Dan Fraga, and told me that he doesn't think Dan is a Nazi or a alt-right or anything like that. So you reach out to him. I'll pull anybody onto the stream right now if they want to, if they're from that movement, and I recognize who they are. So I appreciate that. We got another super chat. I'll bring the supers up first, and then I'll go through and do some of the other chats too. This is $25. Thank you. The issue from a Comicsgate perspective is not the monopoly. It's the weakening of the industry by poor quality books and asserting an agenda. Okay, great. Thank you for bringing that up. Because I don't know how you solve that, right? Steve Jeppy is not the guy to solve that. Another thing that's come up a lot is returnability. And people are like, why don't you hammer Steve Jeppy on returnability? He has no say in that. That's the publishers. Again, this is the quality of the books is a publisher issue, right? And it's publisher to publisher. It's different. So you're going to have to talk to Marvel editorial. Do I think Marvel product right now is the strongest it's been in my lifetime of reading comics? Far from it. I think a lot of their output is not great. I think some of the artists that they publish are not at the level of quality that once would have been required to be published by them. But that's me. As far as the writing and the social agendas and stuff like that, honestly, I don't care. A great comic can have can have political axes to grind. One of my favorite books of all time, and one of the greatest comics of all time, is V for Vendetta by Alan Moore. And it is explicitly politically anti-fascist, pro-anarchy, and an amazing work. It has an explicit political axe to grind, and it makes no bones about it, but it's told in an engaging way that's so incredible that even if you don't agree with it, or even if the message goes right over your head, it's a freaking awesome comic that you can love in so many ways. So, like, to say that we should have all our comics should be apolitical and they should just be tough guys fighting and good-looking gals. Okay, there's room for those in the market. There's plenty of them. That's the history of comics. But there's room for all kinds is my point. Let's go to the quality of the comics. If you got a problem with the themes or whatever in a comic, write letters and talk to editors. The biggest problem I see most people have with Comicsgate and the movement is the harassment issue. If you look on Wikipedia, like, it's documented that, like, these people, somebody talked about these people and then those people got harassed, right? It's like, who did the harassing? Who's responsible for that? Who avows it or disavows it or whatever? I honestly don't know. It's such a messy thing. I don't really want to get into it in that way. All I want to do is say, I don't hate Comicsgate people, but I'm not a Comicsgate. I wouldn't describe myself as that. Honestly, I don't know enough about them, and I haven't read enough of the books. Here's my other thing. I like to look at a book before I can buy it. I like to browse it and look on the inside. I don't like to buy a book 6 months in advance and hope it's going to come. That's just not my preferred method. I don't have anything wrong with Kickstarters or crowdfunding or, Indiegogo or whatever. I don't have a problem with that. It's just not my preferred mode. I'm an old dude. I go to bookstores. I browse. I want to see stuff. Like, there was the recent Tim Truman Scout Kickstarter that looked, I didn't even hear about it until it came out. I looked at it. It was freaking awesome looking. I'm like, if I had seen that in a store, I would have bought it that day. But I didn't. And he had a retailer tier too. And I've talked this over with retailers who are like sometimes reticent to tie up money. Hang on a second. I'll read this super chat in a second, but they're reticent to tie up money months and months in advance in product, right? That they're having to take a chance on selling, even if it's a tier. Like I can get, some of you have offered like 40% off if you buy 5 or more or 10, but then plus there's shipping to factor in. So what I'm saying is a retailer, generally speaking, from the book trade or buying direct, is used to getting 50% off and free shipping and maybe even returnability, depending who they buy it from. You don't have to offer that, but you guys seem to talk about returnability a lot. So I could say pretty wholeheartedly, if you could offer those terms to retailers and not require them to pay for full in advance, there would be buy-in. I can tell you that there would be by a lot of shops. And I was just talking to a very well-known person in the comics and games industry, and he was talking about how the games industry is about, maybe he thinks like 5 to 8 years ahead of comics in the crowdfunding initiatives. And a lot of them have retailer tiers that allow the retailer to just pay a deposit, right, on say 10 books. And then so they're not tying up money that they need, for cash flow purposes. So anyway, that's something to consider. I think you guys should consider. I really want to have a crowdfunding panel, and I want to have crowdfunders, and that includes comicsgaters and Kickstarters and Indiegogoers and everybody in between. Honestly, I want to talk about that because I think it's an important model for the future. Okay, super chat. Like you, I love comic shops, but the newsstand was the new reader feed for the comic shops. When the big two closed off its newsstand market, I think we lost a vital component to the industry. Mark C, $10. You're right, Mark. We did, right? I grew up. That was my first comics was off the newsstand for sure. At the bookstore, at the 7-Eleven or whatever. They were there. They were cheap. They were accessible, and they were good. So that's a great combination to sell things. So that's how I got into it. That's gone, guys. Newsstand distribution and returnability was a money loser. It's more the shops that got rid of those, because literally you'll make a lot. It's a lot easier to make a lot more money putting a little standee of sunglasses in the corner that just sits there and you restock it once a year and it makes you money all year long, and nobody's tearing the corners or worrying about this issue or that issue or whatever. No returnability and stripping covers or anything like that. So this is an economics model that's gone. But what we've got now that we did not have then, and this is often overlooked by a lot of the comicsgate conversations that I've seen or been part of. Books, libraries, and schools, man. When I was a kid, comics were the enemy in libraries and schools, right? They were anti-literacy. Thanks to Frederick Wortham and whatever else, comics enjoyed that stigma as subliterate garbage for a very long time. And man, the industry and the creators fought really hard to get rid of that stigma, and they did it, man. And I fought hard, and I got stuff into bookstores. I sold stuff to every library in the San Jose Unified Library District, and every year did a comics in the classroom presentation for the Santa Clara County Office of Education, where we brought in teachers from all over the counties and taught them about comics, about how kids that read comics are kids that love reading. Okay. Free comic book day hit before when all that started, when I first started as a retailer, and everything. And then the movies hit. The first Spider-Man movie is what convinced me to buy that comic book store and get back in, because I thought that comic books were going to gain more cultural relevance because of these movies. Man, I was right, and I didn't realize how right I would be as far as them dominating the movie industry the way they dominated the comics industry and medium for so long. That even shocked even me. But what shocked me more was that we were not able to capitalize as much as I think we could have on that. And part of it was some of the Marvel Now initiatives and the stuff that I've seen comicsgaters complain about. I'm sorry, there was another one in here. I'm missing more super chats. I want to make sure that I bring the super chats because I felt really bad about that. Let's see. You have mic ready creators and fans in the chat right now. Be man of the people and post a stream link in the chat. You can choose who comes on. I'm not going to do that. And I apologize. I'm not I would like to talk to any of you. I would prefer that you reach out to me. Okay. Send an email. Find me on Facebook. Send a chat to me. Send my email. You can send something to comicbooknews@danshaheen.com. All right. Send me a sample, even if it's a PDF that I can look at the comics, because I really want to look at them. If it looks really great and compelling, I'll buy it. Or heck, man, if you really believe in your stuff and are ready to get a review, send me a copy and I promise to review it honestly. I will not pull punches, but I will not call anybody Nazis unless there's Nazi propaganda in the book or something. You know what I mean? Like I'll call it like, you know, like I see them. That's all I've ever done my whole life, and that's all I'll ever do. So let me look through the chats a little bit here, guys. Let me look through the chats. There's not too many of them. Got a lot of hail this, hail that. Adam Post, I talked to on a stream. He was on a stream with me. He's a really cool guy. I really like talking business and comics with him. He's got a lot of experience. Serial numbered comics, Adam. I actually think that was maybe an idea that was ahead of its time. And in this day of print on demand, serial numbers could be the new first printings of comics. Maybe you were onto something. The harassment has mostly become from the other side. Guys, it's a two-way street. Let's just stop yelling at each other and let's start making comics. That's my answer to that. Somebody complained about Wikipedia, I guess, because that's where I got some of my info. That's all I got, guys. I don't know. That was the best I could do. At least they cite their references and stuff, and I could look it up, and I feel fairly secure what I read about it. I read on there. Fake news, comicsgate is love. I guess I don't. Yeah, I'm not saying you're hate. And I did say hate when I talked about it, but I really meant, I guess, just anger and like more like being a hater or whatever. I don't know. I hate that term. Let's see what else we got here. The problem with the agendas is that they have lowered the quality requisite to publish it, not increase it. Totally agree. That's the problem. But the problem is not the agenda. Yeah, it's not the agenda. It's the quality. Agreed. What else? Talking about New Warriors. Yeah. Let's not talk about that. I haven't reviewed it. I want to read that book. What he's saying is that nobody's seen the book. And so like, yeah, let me see the book and then I'll review it. I honestly feel like it's Marvel trolling people a little bit with these things. And everybody's taking the bait though. But like, I don't think they expected the reaction from both sides, just looking at it and going, that is just on the nose. Yeah. On the nose is the right term. I'm skipping some of these guys. I'm sorry if I skip yours accidentally. Yeah, fuck this Hail Caesar. I get it. I'm sorry. I thought he was going to be here. I take the blame for this, guys. Apologies. Dan, hit me up on Twitter. Oh, Dan Fraga at Couch Doodles. Okay, this is Dan Fraga. Let me see if I can do that. Maybe I can. I'm willing to talk to him because I know a friend of his. Let's see. How do I do that? Messages, and you send a message and you put a name in there. Ouch Doodles. I like that. Sorry, guys. I don't have a team. Oh, he can't be messaged, it says here. So I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. I'm not going to put the stream link out in public. Sorry, I'm not. But Dan, Fraga, hit me up on Facebook, man. Let's talk and let's bring you on and we'll talk about your books and stuff. Because man, I know Joe Field and Joe Field knows you, and he vouched for you, and that's good enough for me, man. Got created Free Comic Book Day. He vouches for Dan Fraga. That tells me right there that not everybody associated with comicsgate could be a bad person, because I know Joe, and Joe doesn't associate with bad people and wouldn't. And what is a bad person? I don't know, but I'm rambling again. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say, guys. This is new to me. Let's see. Harassment angle is weak. There are bad apples on both sides of any argument, but bias usually shows one side, small minority, and claim to represent the whole. Also, I bet EVS overslept. Maybe. This guy isn't talking with us. He's talking at us. You said it, pal. It's my stream. I'm sorry you're here listening. I'll listen, but I can't read the comments and ramble on the way I've been doing. The issue is unsellable. Where is that one? The issue is unsellable comics from all main publishers who don't care about the fans. They think they will breed new fans from social movements, but the industry falters and lacks real, oh, here it is, and lacks real growth. The issue is unsellable comics from all main publishers who don't care about fans. They think they will breed new fans from social movement. You might be right. I think it's an editorial, there's editorial issues there. I don't know. I think that you're probably right that there is there's a commercial effort to appeal to like this generation that is into these kind of social issues. But at the same time, this is the generation of the creators that are being hired too. And this goes back to the whole like whisper networks and whatever thing, like blacklisting. It sucks. It's I meant to discuss comicsgate and not to shill. Sorry, dude. I don't know who I'm shilling for, but I'm trying my best here. I'm getting a lot of cool quotes here. Get some sun time, dude. You'll feel better. It was let's see. Yeah. Adam Post trying out for Comic Collectors Universe. Okay. Repost email in the comments. Thanks for doing these streams, especially with Jeppy. If you're talking about my email, it's, comicbooknews@danshaheen.com. Email me. Send me samples of your work. Very interested in it. I will give you a true review, SHAHIN. If you review this or any of my other, I don't think anybody's going to review this. This is a nonsense, nothing video, obviously now. But if you do review one of my videos, it's nice if you mention my name and put my name in there. Like there's been some reviews online where it's like Comic Book News talk to or whatever. Comic Book News is kind of a generic name, I know. So maybe I need to do better with that. Let me see if there's any more supers. I understand what you're saying about the newsstand market. At the same time, the newsstand market hasn't experienced a $4.99 price point. My friend, that's kind of where you're wrong. Have you looked at the price on magazines lately? They're really high. If you pick up a glossy magazine, granted it's more pages than a comic, but we're talking about it's 10, 12, 14, 15 bucks is not unusual for a magazine these days. It's crazy, but that's the paper world we're in, and like comics have been more resistant to digital because some say collectability. I say because of it just stinks to read comics on digital. Let's see. Hey, thanks for being a great platform to connect everyone in the value chain from creators to consumers, especially the Steve Jeppy streams. Your level-headed approach is greatly appreciated. Thanks for the comment. I wasn't so level-headed in the previous one. And I regret that, but what are you going to do? I'm going to try harder. And I appreciate people coming in and giving me another chance. Thank you. I can't go too much further, but I really appreciate this. Oh, okay. We got an email. He says I got an email from Dan. Let me see if I got it, Dan, I'll bring you in for sure. I'd love to talk. Send in the link, Dan. Okay, I'm sending the link. Somebody's coming in. Somebody's calling. We'll see what happens. I'm glad I did this late night. I'm glad I went on and I'm talking with you guys because most of the people have been really reasonable. Even the ones that went and called me a douchebag and whatever because they were mad about what I said about Meyer. I get it. If I'm going to talk shit, I can expect to be talked shit too. And honestly, I think he feels the same way. Because he was really cool about it. Like he knows this is a thing. This is what you do. If you want to get on and have hot takes, expect to have hot takes about you, I guess. So I'm waiting for Dan. I'll wait a few more minutes. I can't wait forever. No offense to him. And if I have to drop before he's able to connect, that's totally, I will reconnect. I'm not dodging anybody. I really do appreciate. Well, that's the other thing. For a second, I'll address it. Maybe Dan will show up. I'll address this, like the thing about like humor and triggering other people. Like as a dude growing up and hanging out with dudes, and I got 3 older brothers, so I come from this like male dominated thing, which just is what it is. I got 3 older brothers. I got beat up a lot. I understand that insults and that kind of humor is funny. Like it's fun. It's funny. It's mean, but it's funny. Right. And so I don't have a problem with it. And I have a thick skin. I try to have a thick skin, but man, I'm new to this. And then so all these dudes come on. Like this guy, he triggered me a little bit too, but I'm getting it now. I'm getting it. It's a game. You can say what you want, and I'll say what I want. I'm just going to promise that I'm going to try and be a nicer person in general. And I want to talk to all people. I plan to have, if they're still going to be willing to come on the show, I plan to have people like, I'm going to have a Heidi McDonald, Rich Johnston live stream, I hope, coming up. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know if this is me, Dan, or are we like alternate Dan twins from another universe?
Hey, I come from the Bay too, man. I grew up in Martinez.
Yeah, I know that because Joe, you know Joe Field, right?
I know Joe. I know Cliff Biggers. I used to work for Diamond. So like when I watch your show, it's like it's a unique thing. The only retailer you had on that I didn't get along with in the past was Brian Hibbs. But it was because Image Comics really wasn't his thing. But yeah, Joe, I've known Joe since I was 14 years old. I even interviewed him when I was a kid for.
I know.
Did you see the video?
Dude, I sent it to Ethan. I heard it from Joe. I sent it to Ethan. I didn't hear back from him on that because I just thought it was funny, and I'm like, dude, there's connections here. So Dan, I don't honestly know your work too well. Like, tell me where I know your work. I know you came from mainstream comics as well, but tell me where I would know your stuff from. And I apologize.
No, don't worry about it. I started in December of '91. I was one of the first hires for Image Comics. I worked for Rob Liefeld for 10 years. I did Bloodstrike and Kid Supreme. I also did my own creator-owned book, Black Flag. Then I worked for Marvel. I did Wolverine for them. I did Black Panther for them, Superman for DC. Yes. I left comics. I went to direct, storyboard and direct. I directed 2 seasons of the Ricky Gervais show. Then I went on to Mattel, worked for Mattel for 6 years.
That's the animated Ricky Gervais.
Podcast
thing, right?
Yeah, I did 26 episodes of that and then went over to Mattel to supervise all of their animated stuff like Monster High, Hot Wheels, Ever After High. And then after that, I moved out here to Atlanta. I've been working on TV, Doom Patrol, Legacies, Tales, a couple other things. And I've been working on my creator-owned book for a while. And now it's out on a campaign.
What's that one called?
It's called Black Flag, Pineapple Perception.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I would I don't know how this works. I want to review it, but I would could you send me a copy? I'll just ask you.
When it's done, yeah. I mean, you can get free copy of the original series. I'll send you the Dropbox link. I mean, it's stuff I did in '94. You and I are probably about the same age. I'm going to think, we're probably the same age.
What year were you?
73.
Oh, you're older than me. Nice. 75.
There you go. So
you look so that's cool.
Hey, easy living. But yeah, I mean.
So tell me this though: when did you join the Nazi Party? I'm just kidding. Kidding, guys.
That's the funny thing, man. I had heard about comicsgate roughly around 2017. Heard a lot of the talk, but not really the research aspect of it. Then when my friend Ethan got involved, I know Ethan well enough to know he's a good guy. Kind of the same sort of endorsement that Joe has given you about me. I knew about Ethan. He's not a bad guy. That, a lot of the stuff they say is misunderstood. I also had watched enough of Richard C. Myers stuff to know that he's not a Nazi, that there's opinions, some that I agree with, some that I don't. But for the most part, the things I'm against, making characters, some of the identity stuff I'm not for, but I would say I was completely Comicsgate adjacent I never said, "Hey, I'm comicsgate," but
Yeah.
I knew enough guys to know, like, I know that guy, I like him. I know that guy, I like him. I know that guy. These guys are not bad guys. I see some people painting things a certain way and shaping stories a certain way, and it's really easy to call someone a Nazi and put them on the defense instead of arguing the real points.
Yes.
And what pushed me over the edge, it was just like a crazy week. So one thing was, I had bought Cyberfrog. I backed Cyberfrog. I said I liked it. There was somebody on Twitter saying um, that Ethan ripped people off by not printing on the best paper, and I said, hey, as someone who bought the book, I don't feel ripped off in any way. In fact, I feel like I got my money's worth. Hi, buddy.
I'd like to go in bed, but Mom said she's gonna tell you we're gonna go into my room and kiss me. So.
Okay, I'll be up shortly, buddy. I love you. Yeah. So the conversation was about the quality of the comic, and I basically said, listen, I used to work in pre-press. I've worked in comics for 29 years. I was very happy with the product I bought. I felt like I got my money's worth. And if we're going to argue about it, we're not paying for the material, we're paying for the work that was put in between those staples. And I liked it. Well, this guy on the other end of this conversation proceeded to call me a cuck, has been, a washed up piece of shit, like all of these things. And I was like, wow, I said I liked the comic, and all of a sudden I'm all of these things. And I'd heard about this type of person, and this is the kind of person I don't care for. I call them wokies. I don't call them social justice warriors, because justice is worth fighting for. And I feel like they're not fighting for anything but control. If you don't stick with my opinion, you're a Nazi, you're a phobe, you're an ist. And I know I'm none of those things. And to be called those things because I support a comic book, it's ridiculous. And
Wow.
then I would see other creators out there. I'm not really politically minded, I would say I'm middle left leaning, not necessarily right, not necessarily left, middle left leaning.
Yeah.
But when I read tweets like, if you voted for Trump, go fuck yourself. I don't want you buying my comics. That's horrible. There's somebody, you mentioned Adam Post. Adam Post and I have had conversations about comics and the future of comics. And being somebody who I worked in retail for 2 years at a comic shop. And
Which one?
It was Comic Mania in Fullerton, California. Okay. It was John Beck. John Beck was the owner, but I worked there to live there. I lived upstairs.
Oh, that's awesome.
But no, I mean, in the Bay, there were tons of stores I used to love. I mean, obviously, I loved Flying Colors. I shopped at Land and Never Was, Comics and Comics, Comic Relief. Those
are the days.
Right? Yeah, no, those are the good days. But the year I always go back to is 1989, and that was when I was like the most hardcore at collecting. It was a time when everything you'd ever want was on stands. Yeah, that store looks really familiar, man.
Yeah, this is Comic Relief.
Yeah,
in Berkeley.
I was gonna say I've been in that.
Let me pull you out for a second just so you can see it. I'll pull me out. So that was the second store, the big Comic Relief, not the little old one, but the gigantic one. Right before Rory Root died, who
yeah, I remember Rory. I hung out with him a few times. What was the one in Berkeley? I always get them mixed up, where it was New Comics downstairs, and then you go upstairs, and all the back issues were up there.
Pretty sure that's Dr. Comics and Mr. Games you're talking about.
Was it?
I think so, but I don't know. That's not one I went to often, even for much at all. But as I remember,
it's been a long time, so I didn't want to get off of my.
I'm sorry.
No, I do that all the time. So when I think about when I was buying comics the most, 89, we had McFarlane on stands, Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, John Byrne, Walt Simonson, Art Adams, Mike Mignola.
I was working in a comic book store then.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is 89. So this
Worked in a comic store.
Yeah, I call that like the sweet spot, and obviously that was the summer of Batman. But the thing that was great is you would walk in with your handful of bucks, and you would walk out with grand slams.
Oh yeah.
Now, when I go to a comic shop, and I don't even find myself to be jaded, I walk into a comic shop. I've got plenty of money to spend, and I maybe take home one book, but mostly it's trades, And what I found out is I don't like the content. I don't like the agendas in the content. I feel like the content.
That's where I go. That's where you lose me a little bit on that story.
Sure,
like,
but when's the last time like we've gotten a comic that's just been 100% fun? You know what I'm saying?
I think we've had a few in recent years. You got to look for them. I like very recently. I really enjoyed a lot of Hickman's House of X, Powers of X.
I fell asleep on those. I tried to read those, and I was like, "Wow, people sitting and talking on benches and shit." Like, no, I mean, I know I'm a fan of Alan Moore. I'm a fan of Frank Miller, Mike Barron, like Claremont.
Yeah.
Huge fan of those stuff. But if you look at the Claremont stuff, he managed to slip the soap opera, the action, the diversity, all that stuff in a nice package in the X-Men that felt good.
For a time it did. Claremont, in my opinion, there was a time when it got less good and got very repetitive. Yeah, and I want to talk social justice as well, and ahead of his time and diversity, and that's all what Chris Claremont was all about.
Absolutely,
about strong, powerful women,
100%
with no powers, leading the X-Men and fighting Callisto. That is his thing,
right?
So there's room. So that's where I go. The themes are not the problem; it's the execution.
Absolutely, right? That's exactly right, Dan. That's exactly right, because
that's my opinion as well.
There's a lack of authenticity. There's a lack of authenticity. And let's say you have a character who happens to be gay. That's awesome. But when you're like, this is our gay character, not just like, hey, I'm a person, I have personality traits, and I happen to be gay, or I'm a strong person that is, whatever, and I happen to be a woman. That's great. But when they put the thing in front of the thing, you just go, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, it's ham-fisted. It doesn't play well. Just like this New Warriors thing, everybody realizes they're being pandered to one way or another, and it's just not. But I'll say this: you could take that same concept of those of the New Warriors, and even tip the same characters in it, right? The same names.
Sure.
And then give me Mark
names
Millar.
Are a little funky.
But you could do it if you wrote it right. So Mark Millar writing something like that and Brian Hitch drawing it, you and I would want to read that.
100%.
Right?
Yes.
It would be great.
Sure.
And that's, to me, that's more the issue, is that the level of quality required to get into what is now mainstream. They've lowered the page rates so much at Marvel, especially.
Yeah.
That there's no doubt that there are some great artists still at Marvel, man.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%.
And that's where I go. The blanket statements about the industry and their SJW agenda or whatever does not fly with me at all. There is maybe a predominance because of the networks of people that are involved that hang out with each other, but that's every industry is like.
But it might also be the vocal nature of it, when you get guys, and I like Donny Cates, I like his work, but I don't like him saying that people are bigots if they don't like something. You know what I'm saying? And going back to what the point I was trying to make as far as comics are concerned is the publishers kind of treat the retailer like they're the client, and to a certain point they are.
They are. I mean, yeah.
But the problem that I saw, like even talking with Cliff, going into the Dr. Knows, I worked on
figures. Comic Shop News contributor and panelist on this show,
and wonderful man
and great guy,
wonderful human being. I love that man.
Me too.
I go into his shop and I worked on that Major X book that Liefeld had done. I'd inked a few pages and I wanted to get a couple copies, and I said, "Hey, do you have this cover?" And he said, "Oh, you know, they Marvel has me buy like 50 copies of this thing to get that cover." And I'm like, 50 copies of that? Why? Yeah. Well, they want to sell that book. I said, that's only thinking of their bottom line. They're not thinking about the consumer, the customer. And at the end of the day, the customer should be thought of number one. Like literally, you make comics for them. Don't make comics to sell to a retailer and then say, it's your job to make it cool to you, the people buying from you. Like, no, man. Make it delicious. You know what I'm saying? Like, make it a tasty burger.
I agree with you, but on the other hand, the retailer really is the consumer in the sense that that's who the publisher gets their money from, and it's not coming back. You know what I mean? Like the retailer has to be so careful. And I don't have to tell you this, but have you looked at previews lately? What a monstrosity that thing is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
and
awful.
You know,
it's really
I'll tell you a little story. So Todd McFarlane, old friend of mine, I've known him for 30 years. He inked the cover of my book back in '94. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, Todd, I'm bringing the book back. What do you think about, I got the characters bursting through our cover. What do you think about inking the new ones?" And he said, "Yeah, absolutely. All you got to do is bring it to Image." And I said, I guess you're not going to be inking my cover then, man. Like, thank you for the consideration. And he said, "Well," I said, "Listen, there's so many gatekeepers involved now. So let's say I go to Image, and I've had books at Image, my own creator-owned books. You go there, they take care of printing for you, take the letter for you, take care of colors. They put you in previews. They get you in the catalog. They handle all the administration. Once your numbers come in, your check gets cut. They subtract what they paid for you, and you pay them $2,500 each issue. So there's that. Okay. So there's that piece. Then there's, once you're in previews, you have to deal. I always say, I use a round number like $100. The retailer has $100 in his monthly budget, more or less, but I'm using a round number.
Sure.
Let's say 40 of it's for Marvel, 40 of it is for DC, 10 is for Funko Pops and shit, and then 10 is for indies and Image and all that other stuff. Okay? So there you have the problem. If Marvel says, "Yo, we're doing this special crazy fucking thing this month and you got to buy 20 of this and that," suddenly the retailer's got to go, "Well, I'm going to take 5 from Funko Pops. I'm going to take 5 out of Image," whatever it is, so they can get that big thing they don't want to miss out on. So there's that competition. And at the end of the day, let's say your book is $1, okay? Round number. You as a creator get 45 cents on that dollar because of Diamond's cut.
Sure.
Right? So you're fighting through all of that filtration to get 45 cents on the dollar. So then from that 45 cents, you got to pay your writer, your penciler, your inker, your letterer, your colorer, the printing, all of those things that Image covered, you got to pay for that 45 cents. Whereas with crowdfunding, you're talking directly to your customer. You're listening to your customer. You're respecting your customer. You're creating a book. I consider myself customer X. I am customer number 1. I draw and make the shit that makes me happy, that makes me want to sit at my desk for 12 hours a day without getting up. So I know if I'm happy, my customer's happy. I sell directly to my customer, and every dime that I make on that book, yes, I pay for printing, I pay for all that stuff, but I can sell a whole lot less, make a whole lot more, and sustain being able to make the books that I like and my fans like.
Sure, you're cutting out the middleman. I mean, although Indiegogo takes their cut, I don't know what percentage.
It's small. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but there's obviously economic benefits. Like, granted, I get you. On a per unit basis, you have a higher profit margin, no question about it, because you do not have multiple middlemen and distribution chain that need to get their cut.
Yeah,
However,
Dan, this is the exact reason that image was formed.
Sure.
It's the exact reason. They were getting Rob Liefeld, who created X-Force, who was getting points as a penciler, an inker, and a writer, was still getting less than 10% on royalties. Okay, so
I got you. I was around for the image revolution. I remember it happening, all the creator rights struggles. I'm totally down with it. I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to comics, to tell you the truth. It was the smartest thing. And I think that I think you're trying to draw the analogy that kickstarting is like the next evolution from that image.
Yes, you're taking a risk. Here's the difference. And I'm not knocking any of the image guys, because I know all of them. I've known them since I was a kid. I have respect for all of them. But when they jumped, they had their names. You know, that they were Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee. So there's going to be, and that's why when they took that leap, guys like Rob said, okay, if I sell 1 million at Marvel and I'm getting this piece, all I really have to sell is 25,000 to make the same thing. They, of course, they went and sold 1 million of the copies and shit, and they lucked out. But the risk they took was an easy one, because I get what you're saying. There are a lot of guys that are crowdfunding in comicsgate. They're literally braving the wild, and if there's nobody there to support it, they don't make anything. You know?
There's a risk and reward, and what I was trying to say is that yes, there is a decreased profit margin for using distribution, but then there are benefits. Like, there's trade-offs to any approach, right? So you get the benefit of, you only have to ship 100 units to one place as opposed to shipping 100 units out across the world. There's economies of scale. There's the fact that they have a comics audience in those stores that love comics and want to spend their money on comics, and now your comic is next to theirs. Like, there's benefits to that.
Yeah.
And that's where I see the guys that are Walmart, that are going into Walmart.
Allegiance. Yeah, Allegiance Arts.
Comicsgate, are they Comicsgate adjacent? I am having a hard time understanding that.
I can't really put a finger down on it, because I can't give you a definitive answer. I don't know the history. I know that Red Rooster, that Mitch was at least Comicsgate friendly. He, sold his book on the Comicsgate channels. So my assumption would be yes, he is. But that would be my personal assumption. That's not a statement of fact.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're probably, if they are, they're not shunning it, but they're probably not anxious to like claim allegiance to something controversial when they're trying to get into mass market like that way. And you'd rather avoid that kind of controversy, I would think.
Yeah, it depends on the kind of person you are. Like for me, the way I described, I was interviewed a couple weeks ago, and someone asked if I was scared when I decided to say straight up, like in a very public way, that I'm Comicsgate. I said, imagine meeting a genie, and he's like a very limited genie, but he gives you one wish, right? He says, how would you like to know where you stand with everyone in your life? Would you are you ready for that?
Yeah.
And you go, okay. And then I found out people like guys like Eric Larson, who I've known since I was 14, bounced out on me like that. Friends that I've known, like I said, 25, 30 years, guys that I've known as well as Joe. Joe's a good guy. Joe Field is a good guy because he knows me and he knows my heart. He's obviously going, Dan's a good guy. I literally had people say, oh, fuck you, man, I'm out, without even asking. I've had people give me a call with a conversation. Hey, man, why would you do that? It's not your sort of thing. Aren't they Nazis? Aren't they misogynists? And I'd say, listen, no, they're not. And like, I'm hoping that my presence is a testament to the fact that it's none of those things. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, yes, I hope that's how it works for you. And I'm with you that it is completely, I really hate that. I hate the guilt by association without.
Yeah.
And what I hate more, what I really hate though, is nobody wanted to talk and nobody wanted to like speak about this stuff. And when I expressed interest in it and said, look, I want to talk to Ethan and I just want to see what the truth is and what's going on here, like, and what's really going on. And guys like you, I was really warned hard that I'm going to get a bad reaction, that I'm going to get that kind of shunning, that I haven't seen it yet because this hasn't really happened. And honestly, I'm hoping we're past that point and that the people that know me, if you've watched my videos or you know anything about me, right? They know Dan Shaheen is not a social justice warrior, but Dan Shaheen is not a right-wing.
That's right.
Anything.
That's right. But that's the assumption about comicsgate is there's this, and this is something I learned early on, is that from the outside, there's this perception that comicsgate is this hive-minded monolith, that we all think the same thing, that like we're bees, like there's a king or a queen bee that disseminates things out, and we all no, everybody's different. You know, I've come to learn to know and love guys like Cecil, John Malin, Adam Post, Ethan, Anna, a lot of people. I could, the list goes on. I mean, I can spend all day listing them out, and they're all great. They're all different. They all come from different places. They all have different political leanings. What ends up unifying us is a respect for the customer. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, like because we're all comic book fans. I didn't have to go Comicsgate. I wasn't pushed out. I was actually sort of more like, nah, you know what? Comicsgate is right. I've ran into enough of these people that I've heard about that are now hacking, and I haven't said anything or anything, and I'm being attacked. You know what I'm saying?
You're breaking up a little bit on me, Dan. I'm sorry. Your audio.
No, I'm saying it was easy for me. See, they're mentioning them in the chat, Kelsey and all those guys. But no, I'm saying I wasn't kicked out of any publishing thing. I wasn't blacklisted, any of that. My joining was more of a statement with, I stand by Comicsgate. I am Comicsgate. I hold the same values, and none of those values are remotely close to anything like Nazism or bigotry or homophobia at all.
Yeah. I from everything I've seen, I'll be honest, I haven't seen overt any of that stuff. What I'll be honest, what I do see is a lot of stuff couched in humor and trying to trigger people, and a lot of trolling on both sides, right? Like it's on both sides. But
some of the other sides, the problem with the other sides is they find it okay to dox you. They find it okay to like create vitriolic situations. You know, like that.
So that's what I was warned that was going to maybe happen to me, and that why people were worried about not wanting to come on and talk with Ethan or other Comicsgaters. It was like, I would be willing to talk to the guy, but I just hear that I'm going to get attacked by this army of trolls, and I'm going to get doxxed, and I'm going to get everything.
There's this weird, absurd fear that happens. Like you mentioned somebody, a friend of mine that you're going to have on, Heidi McDonald, right? Yeah. I've known Heidi since I was like 15 years old. I've known her since I was a kid. She was my editor before. She's done articles and interviews with me. And when we talked about Comicsgate, she said, you know, I can't really talk about your stuff or cover your stuff, or, you know, the office will riot, you know, like, because like we don't cover that. And like, she's my friend. I still love her. But like when I'm on your show, and the reason I was like, you know what, because I don't know if you saw in the chat, I have kidney stones right now, and I'm like in tremendous amount of pain.
Me too.
Yeah, okay. It's fucking horrible.
Like I just passed a 9mm kidney stone, dude.
Okay, I've got a 5er in me right now. So you get it. You understand what's going on. Dude. So like right now, like I'm you know, I'm a little slower than I would normally be. But the reason I decided that I wanted to come on your show is you're very fair. You know what I'm saying? You show all the sides. You know, you're trying to get a rounded holographic opinion of things, and it drives me nuts that a lot of the comic book journalism out there is super one-sided. They don't want to cover Comicsgate. They don't want to, like, Comicsgate, we've made over $2 million in campaigns and funds for our books since January.
Okay,
That's
so
huge.
I'm glad I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
I wanted, because I've been talking. So here's the thing. They do an annual roundup of the size of the entire comic book market every year, right? ICV2 does this every year, and they include crowdfunding, but Kickstarter breaks down their categories. So Kickstarter could tell you we've raised this much money in comic books.
Yeah.
Indiegogo does not. So there's no way to know how much Indiegogo money is going into comics.
All you have to do is ask, though, because like there's literally, the way I know is there's people keeping tallies of it. They're keeping not just Comicsgate books, but comics.
Yes.
They're keeping running tallies. All you have to do is go on Twitter and you'll see these charts, and nobody's fudging numbers. They're literally, you could literally go on
seeing those. And I'm interested in getting those into the hands of ICV2, right?
Yeah, they don't want them, though. That's the thing.
No, they do. You're wrong.
Then they go and find them. They're easy to find.
Like I said, dude, Milton Greep, the guy who runs ICV2, he's the original owner of Cap Cities Distribution. He was a comic store owner. He was a publisher. He published Nexus by Barron and Rude. Okay. He's deep, and he does the deepest business reporting. He doesn't cover Comicsgate because he doesn't cover the social issues. He covers the economic issues.
Well, we're an economic force at this point.
I had a long conversation with him about just that.
Yeah.
And that they should make an effort to be measuring the Indiegogo side as well. However, he came back with me with a good point. He said, Dan, how much would you say those Comicsgate books total up to? Would you say 5 million? I said, I don't know. Back of the envelope, I'd say it wouldn't surprise me if they hit 5 million. Okay. He said, well, Dan, we're in a $500 million industry, right? So that's like half of 1% of the industry. It is small. It's a very, very tiny fraction, right? It is a drop.
Is he counting merch? Is he counting like Funko Pops? Is he counting Pokemon cards?
That's considered part of the market. Yeah.
Well, that's what. Okay, let's do comics.
But if you look at comic, but still, either way, even if you look at the comics market, if you have to expand that outside of the direct market. If you had the book trade and mass market,
well,
which
then you can go on Kickstarter and include all those board games and all the toys. Then, like if you want to bring those numbers in.
They do. They cover games as well. They cover the game industry. And he was the one who told me that the gamers are ahead of comics people in the crowdfunding arena. They've been doing it longer.
They're doing great. Yeah. And Kickstarter seems to be the stronger platform for games.
Yes. So what he told me, though, is I mentioned this earlier. If you were to come up with a retail tier that really made sense from a retailer's perspective and not force them to in the game industry, you can pay a percentage, like a deposit as a retailer and say, I'm going to take 10 copies or 20 copies, whatever it is, but you don't have to pay the whole amount. So you're not tying up all your money for 6 months or however long the Kickstarter takes. Because that's the death. Cash flow is what a retailer lives and breathes by.
Absolutely.
I can tell you about real industry experience. So you understand these things.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So if you were to offer, if I'm a retailer, if somebody were to offer me a book that I thought I could sell, and that is key, it has to be quality comics, right? And good, and that I can sell. And I think you do that.
That's what I do. Yeah.
My guess is you can. I haven't read your books, but my guess is you can.
You got to see my, have you seen my campaign?
Not yours, I don't think. Let's bring it up. But what I was going to say is if you could offer that kind of thing with a percentage down, a small percentage down, and free shipping and 50% off at a certain purchase amount.
Yeah.
10 copies or whatever. That's a deal. That's a standard book trade deal, and retailers could get behind something like that.
That's if you're selling the same product. You know, Brian Pulido has made some strides in presenting his book sort of in I use automobiles as a way to describe stuff. Let's say he puts out the Lexus first, right? Bells and whistles Lexus. That's crowdfunded. Those hardcore fans want that thing with the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
He vaults it for a little while and then puts it he breaks it into 2 issues and then offers it through retailer down the line for a lower price point. Here, I'll show you. Go back to the thing, and I'll scroll through it for you. So this is my campaign. I got to
switch here. Let me switch to this view.
Yeah, no problem. So this is the old McFarlane cover with my characters bursting through. These are my characters. Again, they're all from the mid-90s, just bringing them back.
These are McFarlane inks on your pencils? Is that what's going on? What did you say?
McFarlane's inks on my pencils on the cover that they're bursting through back behind the characters. So kind of like the new X-Men, where the X-Men are bursting through. So this is my 2020 drawing jumping through my 1994 drawing.
That head there, the head above those guys bursting through, that's so McFarlane to me. That's so 89 Amazing Spider-Man McFarlane.
Yeah, man. He's one of my early influences.
He was my favorite as a kid for sure. Like, I loved him back in that era. And I still like his stuff. So this is
the team here. We see the eclectic blend, and then we see some of the characters. But this is the kind of stuff I like to do. I like high intense action. I like the kind of characters that excite me. I like drawing guys with big guns. I like drawing anime babes. I like drawing big purple monkeys and aliens that are, can contort like a McFarlane Spider-Man, wizards. And I like Wile Kit and Wile Cat. Remember Thundercats?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a little boy and a little girl, and they go and they do their adventure stuff. But awesome. This campaign, we've got 17 left, and we're almost at 100,000, which is something I couldn't have done through direct marketing at all.
I think it's great to me. So if I were doing this, and I'm not a comic creator, so whatever, take my advice for what it's worth, which is nothing. I would be designing a campaign where, like you said, the Lexus, the hardcore fans, right, the special edition, the signatures and whatever. And then I would be using the profits from that to print a certain amount to sell into other channels, bookstore channels, direct market, maybe a standard edition trade paperback, right? Because to be honest, that's the other thing that retailers say. They go like, look, I don't need, Tim Truman's Scout. I'll have hard enough time. I could sell a regular trade paperback. I don't necessarily need the giant deluxe hardcover with all the bonuses and everything else.
Right.
So to me, it's sort of building into my economic model, like, okay, maybe I'll take a flyer and I'll print an extra 100 copies to sell, or 500 copies,
right,
and sell them to the direct market or to a distributor, or to even not the direct market, but into the bookstore market. Like, why not hit up a Baker and Taylor or another bookstore distributor and say like, hey, man, look at my Kickstarter. I've sold this many copies. Here, take a flyer on this.
Sure. The other thing that like Adam Post and I were talking about this, and it's something that I think about a lot because I have 4 kids. My youngest is 1. My oldest is almost 16. So I've got the whole range in between. And, when they say comics are dead, my demographic, I look at my demographic and it's 25 to 60-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
And you go, well, what about that, 10 to 25-year-old, why can't I get them? And the standard answer is, because they love their tablets and their phones. See, you already have the gesture.
Of course, yeah.
But I actually think that's only part of the answer, and this is what I found out from my own kid.
Yeah,
I try to and my room is filled with comics. They have a dad that makes comics that like, you come into my domain, it's comics saturated, so it's totally normal for them. But if I go to slap a comic in their hand, they don't want it. Okay. But when we were kids, the pinnacle of any IP, like in 1989, the best Wolverine was Jim Lee's. The cartoon couldn't touch it. The video game couldn't touch it. A toy couldn't touch it. There was no movie. The comic was the pinnacle. So that was your entry point. But now the video game and the movie, those things are more exciting, right? I know for a fact that my kids are on their tablets. They're playing games. They're watching TikTok. They're watching YouTube. But my son found out about Pokemon by watching YouTube. He then wanted the game. He then wanted the cards, and then found out there was a comic and wanted that comic.
Yeah.
So it's not that they don't want them; they just don't want them first, because they want to get into the character, and then they get all in on the character and everything that supports. So I say, if you want to get to the kids, invest in getting your IP in front of kids. Have TikTok videos that entertain that kid, to make them enjoy your character, to make them, like in Starship Troopers, would you like to know more? Yeah, I do want to know more. And then lead them to a YouTube video that showing some stuff with your character being awesome. Or the other one, Adam Post and I talked about this one. Imagine a game, right? My kids like Disney Zoom Zoom or Teeny Titans, and they're always asking me, Dad, can you put your password in? I want $1.99 for the Dodo gems or whatever the shit it is, and I go, well, what do you get? What do you get when you get them? Well, I'm just trying to get the golden nugget broccoli thing, whatever it is, the big reward. I'm like, and then, well, what if I made a Black Flag game, and you had these in-app purchases that get you to beat these bosses, but at the end is a comic book, right? Something cool that they're working towards, and they get a book and they feel like they earned it. I'm just saying we can get the kids if we think about how to get the kids. Getting the kids, I'm sorry to the Brightweisters. I want them to win in Walmart. I really do, because my friend Dave Williams has got the Bass Reeves on there. My friend Kelsey's got his book. I want them to win, but the problem is there's no context for it. You walk by it, it's comics with characters you don't know.
Yes.
And
I have a lot of questions about that approach, but I also was talking this around with some pretty smart people about comics, and I started thinking that the one thing that's different now, like, because I went back to the 80s and 90s, right? And there were comics companies that went out of business because they put their comics in bookstores and they were returnable.
The returnability. They got crushed.
Right. They got, this, right? Comic was one of them. There were a bunch of comics that got destroyed. And also what I know about Walmart is they are 100% not taking one penny of risk on any of those comics. There is no way they are going to eat even one dime. Even in the comics that get damaged, they are not going to pay for those. That's going to be on the vendors. So I don't know what kind of contracts they've worked out, or what kind of finances, or what they paid, or whatever, but I hope they're aware of what has happened in the past so they can avoid that happening to them in the not too distant future. Right.
That's the thing that's scary. I have friends, other publishing friends. I'm not going to name names just because I don't. But they themselves have had Walmart deals that have crippled them. Because of the returnability. And like, I think here's the problem, did I disappear? Oh, there you are.
I'm just going to drink.
Oh, okay. I'm like, man, you made my head all big. No, the problem is that, again, these books, they need to have some sort of support that lets people know they're in a Walmart. And the issue at hand that as I know it, and perhaps somebody can correct me, somebody in the chat can correct me, is that the Brightweisters campaigned the Red Rooster book and never fulfilled it, and spent a lot of their time getting this Allegiance Arts deal and having this sort of smaller version of the book in the bookstores, and people are feeling a little burnt by that. So, like, on one end, it's like you should have finished the book, fulfilled it to those customers, then put something out, because then that would have given them a reason to go to Walmart. But you've literally burnt those people. So, like, to me, what it represents is completely awesome. I think what having comics in a Walmart represents something awesome, but with the returnability aspect, with the fact that these characters aren't known or aren't I haven't seen any sort of news outside of comic news that they're around. So, and Walmart is,
I mean,
right. And here's the thing, man, comic people will look for stuff if they need to, but Walmart is John Q. Public. So I'm of the mind, and I don't want to take an old term, I don't want to poo-poo their idea of having it there. No. I myself would not take that risk in a million years. I wouldn't.
We don't know what I don't know their financial backing or whatever. All I know is it looks predictable to me. I could be very wrong. I've been very wrong before, but it just looks like a crushing ready to happen when the returns come in.
Right.
But what I wanted to say though about the lack of the newsstand is that we are now, and kids and comics, okay, is there was this period, like I said, the early 2000s, where we were really battling to get into libraries. That we were winning that battle, and we won it. Okay.
Yeah.
Schools and libraries, book fairs, and everything else. Scholastic took Jeff Smith.
Yeah.
Inarguably one of the greatest cartoonists of our generation.
Yeah, Bone was fantastic. He had that Walt Kelly Pogo vibe. Yeah.
And incredible. It's coming out as a Netflix show too, and it's going to give it a whole new life.
Awesome.
As books. It's been colorized. It's a monster hit all over the world. It is the great comics for all ages. And so that's one of the things. And then I don't know, have you read any of the Raina Telgemeier books? Have you ever read
Smile and Drama? Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think?
I think they're great. They're little slices of life. And like my daughter's 9. She loves them. You know?
Okay. So my daughter's, I have 2 daughters. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Okay. So yeah, you know what's up.
My 4-year-old doesn't understand, but she loves that book because she sees a girl in it and she sees images that relate to her. So what I'm saying is we're now in a place where there are comics for every age group in the chain, and they're accepted. And it's no longer, if you're into comics, you're a geek, you're a dork, because comics have dominated pop culture.
Yeah, this was the life I wished for in high school. This seriously, like we had like little code. Like if you read the X-Men, you were okay. Like you read Spider-Man, all right. You read Batman, okay. But do you read the X-Men? Okay, come on, let's hang out. But it was like a secret club. Now it's like people rock the shirts, and you're like, oh, you're a John Byrne fan? They're like, who's that? You know, but they're wearing him on their shirt.
I just want to go back to 1989 for a second.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Anytime, man.
Let me show you this picture. 1989. This is little Danny Shaheen at Herbert Hoover Middle School. Okay.
Chilling in the bat boat.
We built this bat boat. Me and my friend Peter Caruso, rest in peace, Peter. He was a great guy. We built this thing, and we had and every team built boats. And this was the summer Batman came out, and we were wearing our Batman t-shirts and stuff.
This was in the Bay?
This is San Jose.
Yeah, that was only like 45 minutes away from where I live. That's crazy.
Yeah. And like there were very, very, very few people then that read comics, right? And certainly weren't many girls reading comics.
No.
And what I'm saying is we are in a golden time now where the next 10, 20 years, those kids are going to grow up. They're going to graduate into, there are comics for that next level. And there's comics when you become an adult. And there's people writing adult comics and making a living. And look at Dan Fraga making those cool comics. Like there's now a thing we're going to come into. If we can figure out the way to sell them and make money off them.
We just need to catch up with Japan because they've been doing this for many, many years.
100%. Yeah. And I feel like we're on that trajectory now for the first time because the stigma of those trials in the 50s and the anti-comics mentality stuck around until this century.
The seduction of the innocents is ridiculous. And I forget the guy who was at EC, but imagine if that guy who ran EC was more of an Ethan Van Sciver type and said, fuck you, the monsters stay. You know what I mean? Like, like the difference is they went, okay, we'll put a code on and we won't use strange and weird and murder anymore.
Wait a minute. EC Comic, what they did is they said, fuck you, comics. Mad is not a comic book anymore. It's a magazine.
Well, yeah, they made that a magazine, but where did all the
They did do it.
Where did all the good stuff go, though?
Yeah, they had to stop. Well, they were just market said these are bad. This is juvenile delinquency.
But where did it? But was it bad? Was it?
Obviously not. It was great.
Thank you.
Those are some of the greatest comics ever made.
History is repeating itself, Dan.
But you know what? Now there is the knowledge that was a mistake, and history is repeating itself with video games, right? And with like now, video games are the enemy. It's always the new thing that is a new art form, because comics are a relatively new art form, just as video games is, in my opinion, the newest art form, right?
It's like great. It's a movie cinematic experience that you participate in. It's great.
It's story and art, and it's a art synthesis in a way that's never been possible before. So anyway, we're getting way out there, Dan.
Yeah, we're happy.
I like you. You're not. You're okay in my book. That doesn't mean everybody who's in comicsgate I agree with, or that I'm a. What it means is that you're okay, and I believed it because I knew a guy who knew you, and he talked to me, and now I talk to you, and we know each other, right? And that's as shitty as Pollyanna as that might sound. That is part of what I want to do with comic book news, and this was all a very complicated, convoluted thing to try and get some people looking at this and talking about this issue that nobody else is talking about. So
because there's fear involved. That's the thing that I noticed when I came over to Comicsgate. I ran into different types of people, and it's the fight or flight, right? Like just imagine different types of animals. They go, oh fuck, I'm out, right? And then there's the other ones that go like this, and they dip their toe, and they go, okay, it's not so bad, and they come over. And then there's the other ones that are like, fuck it, man, who cares? And they're like there. I ran into those types of people, and but it all revolved around fear. Oh man, like my inker, I love him to death, still friends, and plenty of people that made commitments to me before I went Comicsgate. Hey man, you know I love you, but I can't really, It's like, okay, it's cool. Like I get it, but I also understand it's fear. I'm glad that you're being fearless, Dan. Like that's awesome. The fact that you're saying, no, let's bring all parties on board. Let's put them all in front of each other and talk, and different perspectives. I really like, one of my favorites was the one that you had Joe, Brian, and Cliff on. That was great. I watched the Jeppy one, and no offense, but I feel like he was softballed hard. I mean, I was watching the chat, and the chat had many, many more hardball questions.
It was really hard because I do this solo, right? And just like right now, there's probably 100 great questions over there that I just can't listen to you and that. And to me, it's more important in conversation.
It's a skill, listen. Bro. Honestly, I'm with you. I started the YouTube thing back in October, and I found out that I end up having to watch my chat, talk, and kind of be of two minds. And what ends up happening is you don't get half as good at it either. Your brain is elastic, and it will adapt to it. Yeah. And you end up becoming sort of like you just are able to read the chat and work at the same time.
I'm getting there, but at the same time, I have a thing against multitasking. I have a sign right here below my camera. Yeah. I put letters and it says, listen more.
Listen more. Yeah. Well,
loudmouth, and I talk a lot, and so like I have to remind myself to really listen and understand.
Well, the chat's talking too is all I'm saying.
Yeah, you're right. Well, what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to think is trying to figure out a way to get somebody to help me on, especially when it's 6 people, then it's too much for me. Like get somebody running the camera, doing the switcher, if you will, technical directing.
I know exactly what you mean. I'm working on that over here on this side too, because I want to focus on drawing and talking, and I figure I can do it. I just need a person. And we're sheltered in place. My daughter will sometimes be watching and go, Dad, someone's asking you a question, Dad. I'm like, oh, Dad, there's a super chat. Like I didn't even ask her to help me, but she'll come and do that kind of stuff.
Well, I have a friend, Mike Hansen, who was on those chats, was watching it and kind of chiming in the chats, and also like cluing me in to say, like, look, this guy's an interesting point.
Have you got admins?
In here?
Yeah. So what you do in your
I
chat,
didn't know you
if
could do
there's
that.
trusted people that are in your chat, you
Yes.
assign them as moderators, and they're able to moderate the chat. They're able to put links in the chat for you, and they pay attention. So that
That's
giving
what I'm
them
gonna.
admin privileges. Also, you can keep a link with your screen open so you can share. There's like all kinds of stuff that you can do.
I just don't know. I'm a pretty computer savvy guy, and I thought I've explored this thing. I'm gonna have to look into it. I appreciate that.
No problem, man. I'm happy to help.
If somebody can do it remotely, like for me from their house or whatever, that could work out really great. Because I really do. I'm self-conscious, man. I read the comments, and I take a lot of them to heart, more of them than I should have.
Well, yeah.
But
When you go on Ethan's show, it's sort of part of the culture. Like you have to kind of think of it like an Andy Kaufman sort of situation,
right?
You know, like I have people call me the fat bald man. They call him the pie eating man. You know, they make fun of the fact that I like bacon. Yeah. So that's all it boils down to is like they're fun. Like I call like pretty much everybody that comes into my zone. My chat room is called the Fraga Boombox, and anybody that's in there is called the dude because the couch dudes. You know, no offense to the ladies, they're dudes too,
right?
Because it's spelled different. But they talk to each other. I'm constantly keeping an eye. I highlight, let them come up, try to answer any questions.
I like this. This is my favorite comment so far.
It is. Dan, you're great. Dan, you're stupid. We could take them. That's the thing. What's funny is I have a shirt like the one you're wearing. I have a brown shirt like the one you're wearing. I could do this.
Pendleton.
Hold on. There we go. You and I could, we could do the Dan show. You see?
Well, Dan, I'll tell you what, man. This is great. You rescued this from being a flaming embarrassing disaster.
Hey, you know what it is, Ethan. Ethan. This is my defense for him, and he is in no way slighting you, because I'll leave him messages and stuff. His sleep schedule is all over the place. He'll stream at 4 a.m. He'll stream at 7 a.m. He'll stream. So I guarantee you, he's napping out with a pie on his belly.
Well, to be fair, he said, yeah, I'll do it anytime. He's like totally willing to. And I told him the time, and I didn't really hear back from him, but sometimes it takes a while. So I figured, let me just schedule it and throw it. I showed him the thumbnail and I just went for it. Apologies to anybody who showed up looking for EVS. Dan, you're welcome back to my show anytime you want. Anytime you have something to promote or want to talk about. I hope that I could maybe call on you to come in and talk with some people sometime and just be on a panel.
I'd love to. I mean, I love comics. I want comics to be around forever. You know, I worked, like I said, I worked in a comic book store. I've worked in printing. I worked at Diamond. I've worked as a writer, a penciler, an inker, an editor. So my perspective is somewhat rounded. Like I told you before, of your panel before, I knew all three of those retailers.
Yeah, and that's rare. So that's that's what's amazing, and I appreciate your perspective because you could know that those guys are all great retailers in their own right. I mean, Hibbs is a great
different. Hibbs is awesome, but San Francisco definitely has a demographic. And same with Joe. Same with Cliff. I love Cliff's store. There's other retailers out here in Georgia that I like. There's now my brain's breaking. Galactic Quest. Kyle Putenkammer. Yeah, he's got 2 shops called Galactic Quest. They're great too.
We're talking about Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm he's in Buford, but the Atlanta area. I mean, like Cliff is out in Marietta, which is again the Atlanta area. But you know, it's like you can say all like of Comics and Comics Relief, Dr. Games and More, Flying Colors. You can say those are all Bay Area shops. You know, so.
Well, so did you ever hear of a shop called Mike's Coliseum in San Jose? Probably not.
No.
Very tiny shop. That's the shop that I grew up in Willow Glen in San Jose.
Yeah.
It's the oldest shop. It's opened in 1984.
That's awesome.
I turned it into Hijinks Comics, and it's still there under like multiple owners and everything else. And like, I love it. I love shops. I love comics. I like comic creators. I like business of comics. So that's why we got a lot in common, Dan. I appreciate you coming on here and saving my butt on this. You really,
my pleasure, man. My pleasure to talk about comics and that stuff. So yeah, you got my info now, and I followed you on Twitter. So now you should be able to message me.
Okay,
I'm Couch Doodles on Twitter. I think one of us has to follow the other in order for that to happen. And
exactly.
there's somebody in your chat named Mike Green who sent me your info, and then I heard you say your thing. So I've already hit you up on Facebook, Twitter.
All right,
but here we are.
You're in. I love it. Well, I'll connect with you for sure. I'll bring you back to the show. Thank you for coming on. I'm going to do a little wrap up here.
My pleasure.
I'll be in touch soon. Okay. Thanks again.
Man. You got it, dude.
All right, everybody. Yeah, Dan saved Dan's ass. All right. That guy was cool. I really liked him. I identify with him beyond his name, hairstyle, and love of comics. And having kids and everything else. I feel like we're parallel dimension Dans. Anyway, guy was great. I appreciate it. Thank you to all you people who came and stuck around. Still 200 people watching. That's a lot of people who sat through my rambly mess. I appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, think about subscribing, hit that thing, the notifications, blah, blah, blah. Come back for more talk about comics, guys, because I'm going to do it. I really feel good about how this conversation went. I feel like minds were open and listening to each other and not just screaming and yelling at each other with their fingers in their ears. And that's all I ever wanted out of this channel. And it's starting to happen. So again, for the record, I'm not comicsgate affiliated. I'm not comicsgate adjacent affiliated, whatever you want to call it. I'm comics adjacent, man. I'm not comics adjacent. I'm firmly ensconced in the center of comics. I love them in every way, from Bazooka Joe comics to Jack Chick tracts to any other kind of comic you can think of. I love it. And I'm going to talk about it on Comic Book News, and we're going to bring in the real names in the industry, like Steve Jeppy, like the great retailers we had, Mike Richardson, Gary Groth, all the great publishers who showed up on that call. And man, you guys all have a place at the table, in my opinion. We'll be back. We will do an Ethan stream. I promise. This was my fault, not Ethan's. Apologies. We'll see you next time.